So could you please introduce yourself and what school you're with?
I'm Heather Decker, and I'm with Savannah College of Art and Design. I'm actually the e-learning program. So I do a lot of troubleshooting on my own. So,
Interesting.
Yes.
So when did you first realize that you were morphing into a technical artist, or did you always know that that's what you wanted to do?
I didn't always know it existed, to be honest. The first school I went to for my bachelor's degree just kind of shoehorned me into this generic game art thing, and that was fine at the time. I guess it was a great starting point for me, but really when I started looking into it, I have this kind of hybrid brain, and at first people were telling me, well, that's wrong. You can't be a multi-skilled person. You have to focus on one thing. And eventually I discovered that, well, wait, there is a thing that people do. It's called technical art, and it sounds like me, and I just kept looking into it, and eventually I started getting my master's, and now I'm able to actually take like art classes and programming classes simultaneously if I want to. It actually all adds towards my degree. It's pretty awesome.
Was it being a master's student where you were sort of encouraged to find your own program or build your own program? Or?
I don't so much get encouraged to. I just kind of took it upon myself that I need to look at classes that are going to build what I want to do. I basically took the end goal and I looked at what's available to me, and I said, what do I need to do to get there? And I decided, oh, well, I just need to make sure that I build a solid, broad, I mean, I'm taking like, let's see, 3D modeling classes and scripting classes, action script. I'm planning on taking some C++ classes. I just want to make sure I have a nice solid ground all across the board.
Okay. So, like from the projects you've worked on, can you give an example that required your skills as a technical artist to solve?
Well, the first student IGF project I was on, I was actually the art lead, and we have, of course, like a programmer, and we have artists, and they don't always, like the programmer will want one thing, the artist will be producing art, and it doesn't always line up right. So I actually had to organize a work pipeline, and I made a wiki to where the artist had specific instructions as far as, okay, we need a sprite sheet that looks like this, we need it divided into equal cells, and different specifications, we need this type of file format, this is how you can do it, and it worked out really well overall. So.
Okay. That's really critical. I think I need to have my students doing that. So with your undergrad, were you on the art side of the house or the programming side? You were in the art side of the house.
I definitely started out with an artistic foundation. I mean, that was the first thing I started doing from my childhood. Was I started drawing, and then eventually I started playing with computers. And then when I was a teenager, I started like playing with repairing and messing with parts of computers. And eventually I started scripting when I started doing graphic design. My first degree was actually graphic design because I didn't know what to do with myself at the time. There wasn't any other degrees around me, so I was like, oh, I guess that's kind of what I want to do. Let me do that. So my 2-year degree was graphic design, and I got to play with web development and ActionScript. So then I got started with the interactive stuff, and I really started focusing on interactive toys, and I made a little game that was really terrible, but it was really fun to make. And I used somebody's Flash engine and kind of adapted it, and they were really happy too, so it all worked out. But, well, then, now I lost my train of thought. What was I?
So you came from the art side, basically.
Yes, yeah, basically I came from the art side, and I kind of meandered my way into what I wanted to do. I love games. I started discovering that, oh, I'm a technical artist, I guess. That's awesome. I found a way to apply my personal set of skills and such, I guess.
That's really cool. Now, you have coursework. What sorts of self-directed learning have you also had to do to kind of, fill in the gaps? Self-directed
learning, it's like every day I want to keep up with the news of what's going on in the industry. I have a Twitter feed that I just fill with like the different news places and the different people in the industry, and I just keep an eye on what's going on, what new things are coming out. I make sure I keep tabs on things like social games got big. Okay, so I go and I check out social games all the time, and I make sure that I'm aware of everything that's going on, and I analyze everything. That also, the whole news aspect of it, then I'm also keeping up with the newest technology, like the advances, what people are experimenting with, all that sort of thing. And then obviously if my school isn't teaching me something, I'm driven to the point where I'm going to go and get it. Like if my school doesn't have a class for MaxScript, which I don't think they do for online, I think it's all only on campus, well, I've decided I need to go dabble in MaxScript, and that's just what I'm going to do. Do what it takes, you know?
Okay. So have you had to teach yourself some mathematics, or what kinds of mathematics do you find yourself using?
Fortunately, I was an art nerd and a math nerd, and I'm just nerd.
You were born to be a tech
I'm
artist.
just a nerd all across the board. So I already had a really great math background. I took calculus in high school. I took more calculus in college. And I took even more calculus like later on in my bachelor's degree in college. And on a regular basis, a lot of the scripting stuff needs trig. Sometimes hear of it needing calculus too, but I mean trig is important, especially basic algebra. You need to have that kind of mindset to where you can fit variables into your logic and understand what all that means.
Okay. What was the craziest math you ever had to teach yourself for a project you've worked on so far?
For a project
or just on your own?
Just in general. Well, I had the unfortunate experience. One of my calculus classes was actually an online class through a local college, and it was an interestingly put together class. We'll just put it that way. And online, they use this like software that we used the software to do the math, and trying to actually make the software work, because it had like a kind of scripting aspect to actually get the problems to work. Trying to simultaneously learn the math and learn the software and try to troubleshoot the software was a horrendous experience, and that was the most challenging math I've had to deal with.
Okay, that's interesting. I would question their instructional design there, but
I'm sure they've improved it by now. I would hope they have.
Have you had any experience yet with low-level technical concepts with the engines you've worked with, and what engines have you worked with at this point?
With my academic stuff, we worked with the push-button engine for my first student IGF project, and that was fun. I've worked with the Unreal Engine as a student, of course, and doing levels and low-level modding. We did some modding, but we didn't get like so intense as to like completely change the camera angle or anything. Okay. I think that might be about it on engines, actually. Haven't delved into a whole lot of engines. I want to play with more, though. I like that sort of thing.
Okay. If there was one thing you could tell academics about the role of a technical artist, like what do we need to know so that we don't screw this up?
Well, I think the core thing is that you need to be a problem-solving sort of mediator. You need to be diplomatic, but you also need to have a good core understanding of art and digital art, especially both analog and digital. I think is really important to have like a combined effort there, and then also have a good understanding of programming logic. Combine all of those things together, and you pretty much have it.
Wow. Is there anything else you would just want to let us know about? Anything
Well, basically, if say your program for school, it might not necessarily give you a specific, like, this is the tech artist program. Don't let that discourage you. Like with my school, like I said, I'm going to build my own curriculum. I'm lucky enough that they'll take, if I make my case, they will let me pull in classes from other departments for my electives, and I can build my own custom program that way. And that's my intent. Just don't get discouraged. Go for what you want to do. Understand your strengths and work with them. That's basically my advice.
That is fantastic. Thank you, Heather.
Yes.